Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment is brought to you by Madisonville Marine, awarded Best in Class among the top 10 dealers for 10 years in a row by Yamaha, awarded as a 5-star dealer and one of G3's top 10 dealers in the United States for 20 years in a row, awarded as a Platinum dealer by Godfrey. If you add all that up, it tells you one thing, that there is no better place to buy a boat in all of East Tennessee. That means from Georgia all the way over to Nashville and probably farther than that. Nobody has the selection, nobody has the prices, and you don't get the quality people to work with anywhere else like you do at Madisonville Marine. Good. Joe Special and his team are just fantastic. And you can find them at 411, on Highway 411 North in Madisonville. madmarine.com. All right, Tennessee's defense was horrible last night, in case you didn't notice. Third down conversions, short yardage, long yardage, 3rd and 20, pass rush, and of course tied to that the secondary, which we said back in August was going to be your biggest issue. In fact, let's take a look at some of these numbers. Carolina barbecued. I was proud of that one. South Carolina 63 points, the most allowed by a top 5 team to an unranked team in the history of the AP poll. Spencer Rattler had 5 touchdowns and 5 interceptions through 7 SEC games. He had 6 touchdowns and no interceptions versus Tennessee last night. It's insane. South Carolina averaged 191 passing yards through 7 SEC games. They threw for 438 last night. Tennessee was allowing 297 passing yards through 6 SEC games. That ballooned to 438, obviously. Only Alabama and Florida have thrown for more against them. Justin, got to credit Spencer Rattler. Got to credit Marcus Satterfield from Greenback, offensive coordinator for South Carolina. Speed sweep, Wildcat, 5 wide. Wildcat, 5 wide, speed sweep. Kept them off guard. You got to give the other guys credit. So now that that's done, what was wrong with Tennessee's defense? How do you diagnose everything that went wrong? Where did it start? You've been in those shoes. You've been in Tim Banks' shoes. What's the deal?
You spend a week prepping for what you think you're going to see. You put a plan together for all these situations, and then you go out and try to execute it. And after each series, you talk about, do I need to make some adjustments? Are there some things that they hit us on, some things they'll come back to? And you try to address those. And it was just like every time Tennessee put their finger on this leak, another one sprouted somewhere else until the dam eventually broke. And it's frustrating because it's a very thin line balancing act of, do we stick to the plan that we worked on from Monday, Tuesday, all the way to now? Or do we start to adjust some things, or do we scrap it? And the more you do, the more your players start to question what exactly it is that we're doing. And I think you start to do things you haven't practiced as much, and more mistakes start to show. And some of the things that we saw last night with the demeanor, those things they show.
I want to get into why he was out in a second, but first of all, let me just ask, how much of this is because, Sterling said it's the soul of the defense was missing, basically, in Jeremy Banks. How much of this goes back to Jeremy Banks not being out there?
I'm going to put a lot of it on that, but I'm also going to put it on the coaching staff, because any problem that you have in business, or whether it be coaching, it's a leadership problem. And you didn't have a leader stand up last night to get into it, to get the team motivated, like Marlon said earlier, to have that big meeting on the field like we used to do with Kiffin. But you need that person to step up to get the team to overachieve again. They didn't have it. And I think that goes back to, this is still a small football team. This is, again, year 2 after 37 people left the year before. You're talking about a decade of attrition where they've not had anything adding to it. And one of Nick Saban's, my favorite stat on Nick Saban is just how many of his actual recruits he actually keeps there for the full 5 years. Tennessee's not had that. They don't have the upperclassmen that have been through it, that are ready to go and to be in those games.
Well, your most experienced veteran guy was Jeremy Banks. How much, Jimmy, is it putting too much on Jeremy Banks? I mean, are we giving him too much credit? Because he looks like the MVP of the team last night. I mean, here's what they look like with Jeremy Banks, which isn't great, but it's all right. Good enough against Kentucky and LSU and Pitt. Here's what they are without Jeremy Banks. Whew, that's pretty bad. How much do you put on the fact that he wasn't out there?
I put some of it on, maybe not as much as Daniel, but here's what I have trouble gauging. I don't know.
I'll be yelling and putting this microphone right.
The emotional. Now, emotionally, maybe that's where he'd be. Look, the guy a year ago had 128 tackles. This year he's got 45. He's not been a super productive player on the field. maybe the emotion is where they missed him more than anything. Heck, he hadn't started 3 games this year. So I think South Carolina wins it anyway. Okay, that's the first thing I'll say. But the second thing is it might be the leadership part that they missed more than the production because, again, he wasn't having a great year, not statistically.
But did you miss him as the guy out there kind of running the defense and at least
That's what I'm
getting
saying.
it? Yeah, exactly.
That kind of part of it, mostly in getting people lined up.
I apologize. I probably wasn't listening because I was putting batteries back in this microphone. Is my mic working? I've got okay, I'm getting a thumbs up. Marlon, well, let's get into it with you two guys. There are rumors swirling that Banks was out. Josh Heupel last night danced around the question. Why wasn't he here? He said he just wasn't available for this one. Anticipates him being back. Hopefully he'll be back for Vanderbilt. When you don't give an answer and say he is suspended, or you don't say he was out with an injury, you invite speculation. And, you know, that is a dangerous place to go after you've lost a game. But that's where they went. So the rumors are out there that Jeremy Banks was suspended for an altercation with Hendon Hooker. There are rumors out that he was suspended for something NIL related, that the altercation was NIL related with Hendon Hooker. There are other, those are the rumors swirling. You've heard them, you've seen them online. Jimmy, what have you heard today?
Well, here's what I believe. I believe that there was an altercation with Banks and with Hooker. I do not believe it had to do with NIL. But I cannot say that altercation is why he was suspended. There could have been something else at work that behind the scenes, because I'm not sure if you getting into it with your quarterback leads to suspension unless there's another thing that happened. So I will say, yes, there was an altercation between him and Hooker, but I can't say that's why he was suspended.
Marlon, do you believe there was something else involved?
I think he missed something earlier this week or the past week with some personal stuff at home. And then when you tie in the altercation, that may have been enough to say, okay, we're gonna hold this guy back. But I do know that altercation was a very small altercation, and those guys shook hands. Which heck, it happens. Offense versus defense. You're the leader of the offense. I'm the leader of the defense. There's a ton of times you're gonna butt heads, but I think that altercation was something small. I cannot pinpoint and say, okay, here's the reason why he was suspended for the game.
And for the record, you coached Jeremy Banks for a year or two in high school.
Yeah.
All right, just so people know that. Now, here's the question then that I've got for everybody, and we don't have much time, but I'll throw it out there. I'll start with you, Coach.
All right.
Let's say Josh Heupel obviously looked at one or two issues here and said, we're holding you back. We're in a playoff run. You're my most veteran guy, but we're holding you back. I would look at that and give credit and say he's building a program. He's trying to keep people accountable. I know that players may look at that and say, hey, stuff happens. What are you doing? You're overreacting. Where are you on this?
I'm with Jimmy and Marlon, I think, in the fact that I don't think a scuffle would be the reason why he lost that game. I don't think so, especially at this time of the year. But I agree with you that if there was something that is a violation of our team rules, that you have to uphold it or they don't mean anything. So if that was the case and it was a violation of team rules that every other kid on that team is under, then I think that was the right choice.
Daniel, you're shaking your head in agreement.
Yeah, you never sacrifice your team for an individual person, and most of the time your team plays better when you uphold those team policies. The only thing I'd be cautious about is if he made an emotional decision, like if Banks did something emotionally, I wouldn't penalize that because those same emotions to make an emotional decision means he's playing with passion, and that's going to happen. It's just like when he first played a year or two ago and he was suplexing people. That's just a passion play.
You've been a coach.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on whether or not they might have?
If there was a missed, here's what I say: if there was a missed team event, anything, and it was due to personal reasons, I'm in no jurisdiction to say, okay, you should be able to handle this, which means you should have been here. People deal with things completely different on certain occasions, dealing with emotions. And so if that was the case, then I can't speak to it and say, yes, you should have been suspended for a game. It depends.
Jimmy?
If he knows he's going to miss, shouldn't he alert the coaching staff though?
It's true.
That would be part of the perhaps issue.
Okay, let's say, just for the sake of argument, a couple things happened. He missed something. There was a scuffle. Was Josh Heupel right, even though it could have cost his team big last night, could have cost him a playoff spot? Was he right to go by the rules?
Yeah, I think you're right to go by the rules. Yes, I do.
If it doesn't cost you a playoff spot in that moment, it will eventually. If you're bending rules for certain
To let it
players.
go.
I mean, that's how Derek Dooley lost our team. You know, he didn't hold our system accountable when Rick Rogers, but he made Kevin Cooper sit out a game his senior year. Rick Rogers, he didn't do it. So
And you had all kinds of opportunities with Jans and Jackson as well.
it's 10 years ago.
So-
It's 10 years ago at this
All
point.
right, very good. When we come back, the wins have impacted people's views on Josh Heupel and Tennessee's future. Does one loss impact their views of the future? We'll ask our guys that next. We got more on the defense. We got more on Vanderbilt. We got bowl outlook. Come on back on the Sports Source.